Okay, so everyone's probably heard about this intelligence conference thing in Delhi, right? But what's the big deal?
Yeah, I know what you mean. It sounds kind of cloak and dagger, doesn't it?
Totally. But I feel like there's got to be more to it than just, you know, spies swapping secrets in smoky back room.
Well, absolutely. This is
Yeah.
about way more than that. Remember this meeting went down at the same time as the Raisina Dialogue?
Right, the Raisina Dialogue.
Huge global conference. I mean, we're talking prime ministers, big names from like 125 countries all there.
So it's like India's making a statement then. They're not exactly keeping this intelligence thing on the down low.
Exactly. It's almost like they're saying, hey, world, we're a major player in the intelligence game now.
Makes you wonder what they're thinking, right? Like, what's the game plan here?
Well, if we look at who was actually there at this intelligence meetup, we might get some clues.
Good point. So we know Tulsi Gabbard was there, right? The U.S. Director of National Intelligence.
Yep, and Jonathan Powell, too, the UK's national security advisor, plus Andrew Hampton, New Zealand's intelligence head.
And those are just the ones we know about, right?
Yeah.
There are probably a ton of others.
Oh, I'm sure. And from all over the place, too. Not just the usual suspects.
But there was one thing that really stood out to me. It's about who showed up from the Five Eyes Alliance.
Ah, yes. The Five Eyes. You want to break that down a bit?
Sure. So for those who don't know, the Five Eyes is this super exclusive intelligence sharing group. It's the U.S., the U.K., Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. Basically, they share all their intel with each other. It started back in the Cold War, and it's been pretty much a closed shop ever since.
And India's never been a part of it, right?
Nope. So to have all these Five Eyes members showing up at an intelligence conference hosted by India, that's a pretty big deal.
No kidding. It definitely says something about how India's role in global security is changing.
So what do you think it means? Like, what's the end game here?
Well, for one thing, it shows a growing level of trust between India and the Five Eyes.
Right. Because you wouldn't share intelligence with someone you didn't trust.
Exactly. And it could mean that India is moving closer to the Five Eyes inner circle. It might not happen overnight, but it's definitely a possibility.
That would be a huge shift. And I guess there are some major benefits for India if that were to happen.
Definitely. Think about it. Access to a massive intelligence network, a stronger voice in global security discussions, and way more influence on the world stage.
Yeah, I see the appeal.
Yeah.
But wouldn't there be some downsides too?
Oh, of course. There are always risks involved.
Like what?
Well, for one thing, India has always been really careful about maintaining its strategic autonomy. They don't want to get dragged into other countries' conflicts.
Right, they've always played their cards close to the chest.
Exactly. So getting too cozy with the Five Eyes could put that autonomy at risk.
So it's a bit of a tightrope walk for India.
For sure. They've got to weigh the potential benefits against the risks.
Speaking of risks and global issues, did you get a look at the themes for this year's Raisina Dialogue?
I did. They're pretty intense this year.
Oh, yeah. Like politics interrupted, shifting sands and rising tides.
Militant mercantilism? That one's particularly relevant, I think.
Oh, yeah. How so?
Well, it's all about economic security, right? Protectionism, countries using trade as a weapon, it's a big concern for India these days.
Especially with all the global supply chain issues lately.
Exactly. And India is trying to become this economic powerhouse, so they're really vulnerable to these kinds of disruptions.
So you're thinking that intelligence sharing could help India protect its economic interests?
Absolutely. If they know what's coming, they can prepare for it, right?
Makes sense.
Yeah.
It's not just about traditional security threats anymore.
Nope. It's economic warfare, too.
And speaking of economic interests, New Zealand's Prime Minister Christopher Luxon was at the Raisina Dialogue too.
Yeah, he's part of the Five Eyes Club, but he had a different agenda, I think.
Totally. He was all about boosting trade with India.
Yep. Brought a whole bunch of business leaders with him. Made it pretty clear that New Zealand is serious about strengthening those economic ties.
So it seems like everyone's looking to India these days.
Yeah, they're a rising power, and they're right in the middle of this strategically important region.
The Indo-Pacific,
Yeah.
right? That's where all the action is these days.
So we've got these two big things happening, right? Increased intelligence cooperation and this push for stronger economic partnerships. It's a pretty interesting mix.
Yeah. It's almost like a new world order is taking shape.
And India's right at the center of it.
So what does this all mean for the average person listening to this?
No, it means the world is changing, and India's playing a bigger and bigger role in that change.
And that's going to affect all of us eventually, right?
Absolutely. Whether it's through trade or security or just the overall balance of power.
So we should all be paying attention to what's going on with India then.
I think so. But here's the big question. What role is India going to choose to play in all of this?
Will they become more involved with groups like the Five Eyes? Or will they try to stay independent?
That's the million-dollar question.
Hmm?
And the answer is going to have a huge impact on the world.
So much to think about.
Well, that's the whole point, right? To get people thinking.
Yeah. We're just trying to connect some dots and see what picture emerges.
And hopefully get people to do their own research, too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Don't just take our word for it. Go out there and learn for yourselves.
There's a whole world of information out there.
And it's changing every day.
That's for sure. So stay curious.
And stay tuned. We'll be back with more deep dives soon.
See you next time.